Welcome back to the Road to National series. In today's episode, I'm going to take you through a dynamic effort upper workout, and then later on in the video, I'm going to be talking about body composition. So first things first, this is me doing my dynamic effort benching for this week. This is the third week in my 3-week wave of dynamics, so is my heaviest week. For this week, I'm doing 3 sets of 5 at 90% total 1 rep max. 43% of that 1 rep max is coming from the bar weight, and 47% is coming from the band tension. Not too much to say about these dynamic benches other than they moved pretty well, and I used a slightly narrower grip, so that actually extended the range of motion, but I'm testing that out because I think it's going to be better for me. So moving on to the accessories, starting off here with banded JM presses. Now, I've never done JM presses with this much band tension before. Here I'm just warming up, but once I've loaded the plates up, I found these to be fantastic. It was a great balance for me because often the bottom position of JM press, where your triceps get a huge stretch, you are the weakest at. However, band tension is accommodating resistance, and throughout the range of motion it gets harder. So these were challenging throughout the entire range of motion, and I felt that they were going to develop my lockout strength a lot, and they really targeted my triceps. So after these, I have a chest press, then dumbbell rows into shrugs, sort of supersets, then side laterals, and then cable crunches. So whilst those accessories are playing in the background, I'm going to talk to you about body composition. So first thing is, I'm going to talk about body composition mostly in relation to powerlifting. So obviously, if you are doing a sport where you're trying to get stronger, like high jump or climbing, your strength to weight ratio is still going to be very important, and you're not going to want to gain any excess body fat. But when it comes to powerlifting, it is not as clean cut as that. People often have found that fat can assist them with lifting, and I'm going to be talking about that in relation to powerlifting. So the first thing I'll say is that if you are in a lower weight class, I would advise you try and maximize your muscle mass. Never try to be smaller than you can be from a muscular standpoint, because filling out your frame and gaining muscle is going to allow you to have the capacity to get much stronger. However, you do not want to gain excess body fat because it's going to put you up into higher weight classes. The competition's going to be higher, and overall, you are not going to gain the same amount of strength proportionally to the amount of excess weight that you are gaining. That is the simple answer. But for people in large weight classes, or if you're not thinking of competing in general and you're just wanting to get strong, you might be wondering, is there some utility to gaining excess body fat? If you're massive, and if you were 6'4", and even if you were incredibly lean, you'd weigh 130 kilos, which is comfortably into the top weight class in the IPF, for instance, the division of powerlifting which I'm planning on competing in. The top weight class is 120 plus kilos. If you weigh 130 kilos, you're thinking, well, if that's what I weigh when I'm lean, there's no detraction from me to gain excess weight. You could weigh 180 kilos not lean. Is that going to allow you to get stronger? So I'm going to break it down lift by lift. So first of all, in the squat, yes, gaining excess body fat is going to help you when squatting. And the main reason for this is that your power belly and your extra fat around your stomach and your legs are going to compress against each other at the bottom of the squat. This is why all of the heaviest squats of all time have been done by lifters with large power bellies and excess body fat. The reason for that is that compression in the bottom position of the squat. Not only do you get the stretch reflex helping you bounce out of the bottom position, you have compression between your belly and your legs, and that's going to help move the weight. Then moving on to bench press, it is a similar story. Obviously, the larger you are, if you have more body fat around your chest and stomach, you are going to have to move the bar less range of motion in a bench press. You don't have to lower it down as far, and it can be very helpful. The greatest bench presser of all time, Julius Maddox, does have lots of excess body fat, and you have to attribute some of his success to that. It drastically reduces his range of motion, and most of the greatest bench pressers ever have excess body fat. However, when we move on to the deadlift, we find that excess body fat does not help a lifter. And the reason is because it is moving the bar further away from your center of mass. So your center of mass is basically stacked vertically up your skeleton, and ideally you'd want to pull the bar up there. That would be the most efficient bar path. That's why you often see lifters with scrapes up their shins, because they're trying to keep the bar in close to them because it is more efficient. However, if you have excess body fat on your legs and stomach, the bar is going to be pushed further out in front of you. It's going to make your leverages worse. It's going to make locking out a deadlift harder. Often people's knees soften at the top of a deadlift and they find it hard to pull their shoulders back when they have excess body fat. So excess body fat can harm a deadlift, whether it is probably going to assist with the squat and bench. However, there are other considerations you need to make. The first one is your overall health. Obviously, powerlifting might seem like your life, but you have a life outside of that. And gaining lots of excess body fat is probably going to shorten that lifespan, particularly if you get really obese. So you also need to think of it in terms of the length of your career. If you are really unhealthy, that could cause you to retire earlier and could actually stop you from becoming as strong as you could be within your entire lifespan. I think people often have a short, narrow-minded view of, oh, what PRs do I want to hit this week, this month, this year? You need to think about your career as a whole. So having excess body fat is probably going to shorten that career, and it's going to affect your overall recovery. You could have things like sleep apnea, which is dramatically going to reduce the quality of your sleep and negatively impact your recovery. It's probably going to mean that you're not going to be able to do as much other fitness, GPP and work capacity type work. And if you're less fit, your recovery is impaired, both in between sets, in between attempts in a competition, and in between workouts from day to day throughout the week. So that can compound and actually make you a worse lifter because your recovery's worse. So overall, I would recommend you do not gain excess body fat for your health, for your fitness, but also actually for your lifting. One, it is directly going to be more harmful to your deadlift than it could be. But the second example that I would like to give as a real world example is the highest raw total ever achieved is by Colton Engelbrecht. If you don't know who that is, he is insanely powerful and has still achieved world-class squat and bench press, even though he is very lean, and he's probably the lightest person to ever put up a total at that level. And he has prioritized not gaining excess body fat, and it hasn't impaired his ability to get ridiculously strong. Obviously, with the highest total of all time, that is literally the jackpot, the pinnacle of the sport, and he is an example of the fact that you don't have to gain lots of excess body fat. So that is my 2 cents, is when it comes to optimizing body composition, I wouldn't give yourself the excuse of, oh, I've taken up powerlifting, I'm going to eat like crap. Just keep it clean, try and keep yourself lean for the longevity of your career, for your overall health, but also for your actual strength level. So coming back to today's video, just finishing up the final set of cable crunches here. I was having a bit of trouble getting them set up, but they are definitely worth it. Help isolate the abs a lot. So that is it for today's video. I hope you did in fact enjoy the video. If you did, drop it a like, drop it a comment, subscribe, click the bell, all of those good things, and have a great day.